Hey guys, I made this tutorial to show you how to do a tactical action in Twilight Imperium 3. I'd say it's kind of a beginner tutorial, but basically my hope is that you could watch this and whenever you do go to play the game for the first time, it would just cut down a lot of time that it takes to explain you how to play this game. Because there are a lot of actions that you can do in this game, but the tactical action is kind of the meat of the game. It's how you get stuff done. So if you can understand this, it definitely will help a lot whenever you do try to learn this for the first time. So with that said, let's get started. I'm going to show you the setup of this scenario. So we have 7 tiles here, and this is just a representation of a small section of the board. Um, and we've got some planets here. We've got a yellow player with a dreadnought, a destroyer, a cruiser, a claimed but unmanned planet, and a planet with 2 ground forces and a PDS. And we've got a black player with 2 cruisers, a planet with 4 ground forces, carrier with 2 fighters, and a PDS with that. So, one more thing. We've got a purple player up top with 1 ground force and PDS. So, this is the setup, and let's get into the steps of a tactical action. So for this example, let's pretend that it is the black player's turn. So the first step is to activate a system, and it's really simple. You just take one of your command counters from your command pool, and you just put it in the tile that you want to activate. So, boom, there you go, activated system. The next step is to move ships into an activated system. So the black player will move his 2 cruisers, and cruisers have a default movement value of 2. That just means you can move up to 2 tile spaces, but in this scenario, he only did 1. Now, carriers down here at the bottom, they normally only have 1, but for this example, let's say that the black player has acquired the XRD transporters technology, and this technology allows the carriers to move 1 more uh, distance. So normally the carrier could only move straight into the activated system, but in this case, he can move over to this tile first, and carriers have a capacity of 6, and there are 4 ground forces on this planet, so he could pick up 3 of those. That puts him up to his capacity. He can't take all 4, and then he can do a second movement, which puts him into the center tile. You can't move, if a system is activated, say that there's some other tiles that were already activated, you can't move ships out of those systems. They're sort of stuck there, but you can only move ships from other unactivated tiles into this activated one. I hope that made sense. So the next step is PDS fire, and this means that any PDSs in range can fire into the activated system. And the rules say that you start with the enemy PDSs first. And enemy means anyone who is not the current player. So the current player is black, so any other player is an enemy to the black. So let's look at the yellow PDS first. For this step, you roll a die. They're 10-sided dies, and if you roll the attack value of the PDS, which is a 6 or higher, then the black player will have to destroy a unit of his choosing. So let's roll this die here. We roll a 2. That is less than 6, so that is a miss. Normally PDSs can only fire within their range is the same tile that they're on. That's their default value, but there's another piece of technology called deep space cannon, and let's say that the purple player has that. Well, that technology allows a player to fire their PDS into an adjacent tile system as well. So in this case, that means the purple player can fire at the black player inside of the center tile here. So let's roll a die for black, or for purple, sorry, and it rolls a 0. So like I said, this is a 10-sided die, and it goes from 1 to 10. So 0 counts as a 10. This is the highest value you could roll, so this is definitely a hit. So now the black player has to decide which of his units does he want to destroy, and he's going to choose just this cheap fighter down here. And so it's gone. No return fire or anything. It's just destroyed. So let me mention one thing. That fighter was, part of this carrier's capacity. Think of fighters as being on the outside of the ship, kind of just the ship is their home base and they're protecting it, so they can participate in space battles and stuff. But the ground forces and the PDS, think of them as being cargo. They're inside the ship, they're packed away, they're not active or anything, so they couldn't have been taken as a casualty there. They're just sort of along for the ride, but the fighters are sort of out in space, so that's why you can destroy the fighter. You couldn't, for example, destroy that ground force there. So that, there's one more thing I'd like to mention. There are actually two things. So you also notice that the carrier down here is carrying a PDS. And so like I said, it is kind of packed away in cargo. It isn't active. If it was on that green planet, for example, then yeah, it could fire at the yellow person ships in this step. But since it's on board the carrier, it's not active, so it couldn't fire. The other thing I'd like to mention is, imagine we have a wormhole here in this tile, and say that somewhere else on the board, I don't actually have it shown up, but somewhere else on the board there is another A wormhole pair, and in that tile with that wormhole there is another player with a PDS on a planet that has the deep space cannon technology. The rules say that you cannot fire anything through a wormhole to hit another player. So even though the tiles are technically adjacent to one another, because of the wormhole, you still can't fire through them. So just know that that rule exists. So now that it concludes the third step, the PDS fire, let's move on to the space battle. And it's a little cluttered here, so I'm going to kind of zoom in and just sort of everything's still here, but it's just rearranged to look a little bit better. So we also, let me show you the combat abilities of the units that will be participating in the space battle. Did I say combat abilities? I meant attack values, sorry. So these are the numbers that you have to roll on the dice. That it has to be either this number or higher to be an actual hit. So the first step of a space battle is the pre-combat abilities. And pre-combat abilities can, your race can have them, there are action cards that have pre-combat abilities, and there are even some units that have that. So for this example, the only unit that has a pre-combat ability is the yellow's destroyer. That's the tiny one with the number 9 on it. And its pre-combat ability is that it can roll 2 dice before a space battle, and if it rolls a hit, which would be 9 because that's its value, then it can destroy fighters, just fighters. So let's do it. We've got 2 dice. Let's roll them, and we roll 1 hit and 1 miss. Well, the black player only has 1 fighter, so that's a hit. It's destroyed. So go up here, blow it up, gone. No return fire, it's just gone. And that's the end of the pre-combat ability. Now you move on to the announce retreats / withdrawals phase. And essentially here, the attacker can decide whether he wants to withdraw from battles. So let's say that he moved into the system because he wanted to have a space battle, but let's say that in the PDS fire step, he took a lot of, got a lot of units destroyed. And then let's say the pre-combat ability, lost, killed a bunch of his units too. Well, he might say, oh man, I've lost so many units, I don't really want to waste more because I'm not going to win this fight. Well, he could announce that he'd like to withdraw. Same thing goes for yellow player. He could say, I'm way outgunned in this match, I'm not going to win, I don't even care about this system, I'm just going to save my units and get out of here. So he could announce that he'd like to retreat. So you not make those announcements now. There's this thing, I don't know if I want to say it now or when we get to the execute the retreats or withdrawal step, but there is a, all right, yeah, let's wait till the other step and I'll explain it. So let's move on to the roll dice phase. So now for each unit, each ship out here in this space battle, you roll a die to see if it rolls an attack. So let's focus on let's go from left to right. So we've got two cruisers, one black, one yellow. And we're going to roll for those first. So they both attack on a 7. So black rolls a hit. So we're going to just count it. We're not going to do anything with it right now. We're just note that there's one hit and yellow missed. So now let's roll the black die for the other cruiser up there. So it's also rolling for a 7. So it rolls an 8. That is higher than 7. So remember, 7 and above is a hit. So that's also a hit. Let's just count it for now. And now we will roll for the 2 9s, the destroyer, the little yellow one, and the long black one. And they're both misses. So nothing happens there. So let's move on to the dreadnought. That's the other yellow one. And it rolls a 9. That's a hit. So here are our hits. Black rolled 2 hits and yellow rolled 1. So our next step is to remove casualties. So to do that, we have to assign these hits. And the rules say that the first person to remove casualties is the attacking player. So that would be black in this scenario. So yellow rolled a hit, and the player who is taking the damage or the hit gets to decide where it gets placed. So black needs to decide where he wants to take this one hit. And he's not going to destroy his carrier because it's holding all of his landing units. So he's just going to take out one of these cruisers here. And so now yellow needs to decide which 2 of his units are going to take these other 2 hits. So first, he's going to assign 1 to destroyer, which it's just gone. It's the cheapest one out there, kind of the more useless one. And this other hit, he's going to put it on his dreadnought. And dreadnoughts have a special ability where they can take 2 damage before they are destroyed. So this one's just damage. It still functions exactly like it did before, but it's going to take 2 hits to kill it. So now we move to the execute retreats / withdrawals phase. And I just saw that typo, so that's great. But anyways, if you had announced that you wanted to retreat or withdraw in that earlier step, now is when you do it. So to do that, the original rules say that you retreat or withdraw to an adjacent already activated system. And if there aren't any, then you can't retreat or withdraw. Then one of the expansions added this rule called a tactical retreat, or withdrawal, and I think it is actually that rule is used a lot by a lot of people. And the way it works is in that earlier announced retreat / withdrawal phase, you can take one of your strategy allocation counters and put it in an adjacent unactivated system. And now, when you are in this state, the execute retreat / withdrawal one, you can retreat or withdraw to that counter there. So like say you didn't have an adjacent already activated system, well, this would count as that. So, it's up to you what you want to play, but that's how it works. So now that this step is done, you loop back to the beginning of the space battle, except you skip pre-combat abilities. That only occurs at the very beginning of the space battle. So we loop back to the announced retreat / withdrawals. And just as before, we're not, I explained how they work, but we're not actually going to do it in this example. So we just move on to the rolled dice, and let's roll for the 2 cruisers again. So black rolls a hit and 6 misses. So let's roll for the carrier and the dreadnought. And we have a hit for the carrier and a miss for the dreadnought. So it's not looking too good for yellow here. And we move on to the remove casualties thing. So there's only 2 possible places to put these hits. So both, put it on the cruiser here, it's destroyed. Put the other one on the dreadnought. Now it's destroyed. So there is this execute retreat / withdrawal phase, and the rules say that even if you had announced one earlier, if you are the last, if you're the only player in the battle at this point, then you just stay there. Like, that wouldn't make sense for you to win the battle but then still retreat. So if you win, and then you just stay there, even if you announce a retreat or withdrawal. So now let's move on to the planetary landing step. And for this example, all you need to worry about is this carrier right here. So in planetary landings, it's pretty simple. You just divvy up your landing force. Just say you assign which planets you want them to go to. So here we have a 1 ground force going to the green planet, 2 and a PDS going to the red planet. And that's it. You move on to invasion combat. So let's look at the green planet first. This one's really easy. It's an unmanned planet. So you just land your ground force. It takes the planet. You get the planet card, and now it's yours. That's it. The red planet is a little more complicated because there are forces on the planet. So invasion combat works a lot like space battles. It's got its own sub-steps, but I didn't list them here because they're pretty similar. It's just like the same thing, but without retreats, pretty much. So first, there would be these pre-combat abilities. In this example, I'll explain these, but they wouldn't matter here. But say the black player had a war sun. War suns can bombard planets, even if they aren't landing any forces, or even if there is a PDS protecting that planet. Bombarding means that you just roll some dice, and if you roll hits, then the player has to remove some ground forces. If the black player had a dreadnought, and he was landing forces, and there wasn't a PDS protecting this planet, then he could also bombard. But in this example, we've got this landing force, and there is a PDS here, so we get to do this pre-combat ability where the PDS fires at the landing force to see if he can take out any. So here we go, we got the PDS with an attack value of 6, and he's going to roll his die to see, and he rolls a 6, so that destroys one of the ground forces here. So before they even land, they're just destroyed. So after that, you land the units, and the black PDS technically isn't landed. It's just sort of along for the ride, and if the invasion is successful, then he'll be on the planet. But for now, he's just hanging out there. So we've got 1 versus 2 here. So here are the attack values. Everyone's attacks on an 8 here. Let's add a die because we've got 2 yellow players and 1 black player. So let's roll them. And we have a hit for black and 2 misses for yellow. So assign this hit. Yellow player's gone, and now we just do it all over again. We just roll at least you roll the dice to see who attacks who. So we've got only 1 yellow player now, so we could get rid of that other die. So let's roll. And black player misses, but yellow player scores a hit. So that means yellow player successfully defended this planet, and black player did not successfully invade it. So that means that the black player's PDS is destroyed because there's no forces on that planet to, protect it. So it's just gone. If black player had successfully taken over the planet, then the yellow player's PDS would have been destroyed because there's no one there to man it. So that concludes the invasion combat step, and you move on to the produce units step. And in this example, there would be no production. It's just impossible given what we have here. But let's just say, just for the sake of showing you how it works, let's just say that there was a space dock on this planet. And you can build space docks on planets that you've had since the beginning of your turn, but let's just pretend that this was here already, and this 3 down here counts for the resource value of the planet. So the way production works is that you can produce the planet's resource value plus 2. So in this example, the planet's resource value is 3 plus 2, so we can produce 5 units from this space dock on this turn. And one thing to keep in mind is your fleet supply limit, and that'll be on your race sheet depending on how many counters you have there. But let's just say for us right now, for black player, you have a supply limit of 3. And here is your hand of planet cards. These are what you spend to build units. So let's say that the black player wants to build a cruiser. Cruisers cost 3 to build. So if you put that there, and look in your hand of planet cards, you see that there's that planet right underneath the exhausted one. Exhausted planets are face down, meaning that you can't use them. Only the face up ones can be used. And you see the first face up one has a resource value of 3. That's the number in green. And to spend it, you just flip it over, so it's now exhausted, and now that cruiser is paid for. So keep in mind that we've produced 1 unit out of our total of 5 possible, and we've hit our fleet supply limit. So we can't put any more ships in space except for fighters. They don't count towards your fleet supply. So now let's build our next thing. Let's say you want to build 2 fighters. The way that works is it costs 1 resource to build 2 fighters. So you might say, okay, well, it costs 1. I've already paid for my cruiser here, so I'm just going to flip over this card down here with a resource value of 1, and those fighters are now paid for. Well, now let's say that you wanted to build some ground forces. Ground forces are just like fighters. It costs 1 resource to build 2. So if you did that, look at the cards that you have left in your hand. You've got Wayland, which has a resource value of 2, and you've got Mir, which has a resource value of 0. So you can't use Mir, and you've got Wayland, and you only need to spend 1. So you'd have to use Wayland and just waste 1 resource. So you don't want to do that. So let's say you didn't exhaust that card earlier. What you need to do is just put your units out there, the ones that you want to build. So you've got we've already paid for the cruiser, but you've got your 2 fighters, your 2 ground forces, and now just spend Wayland to use the exact number of resources that you wanted. And so now it's paid for. And that's it. That's how you produce units. So now that your turn's over, and it goes to the next player, and that's it. That's a tactical action. So I hope this was understandable, and I hope that you learn something, or at least makes it easier whenever someone tries to explain it to you or you play your first game. All right, thanks.